Hey Flosstube, it's Kim. I'm back again with another weekly Flosstube update. This is number 52. Today is the 20th of January 2020. A whole lot of 20s going on. So, I had an unexpected new start. I've been watching the Peppermint Purple 52 Weeks of Black Work free stitch along on Instagram, and I decided, what the heck, why not do it? I can use up some cool fabric and floss, and it's only one tiny little block every week for the entire year. Can't be that hard to keep up with. So if you're interested in joining, it is a free sale, but you have to join the Facebook group because there's like over 7,000 people at least who are in the group. I don't know how many people are actually stitching it, but it was too many to actually send out emails. So she is uploading the file with the pattern every Wednesday into the group. So I will have the group linked below. She does have colors charted that are kind of like in a rainbow theme for the entire piece with the framework done in black. But of course, a lot of people are picking their own colors. I was going to use like colors from my grandma's stash, but then I was looking at my fabric and floss stash, and I decided to do an autumn/Halloween type vibe instead. I'm using one of the fabrics from the Color and Cotton Halloween box, along with 4 of the flosses that came with it, and then some from my grandmother's stash that are unmarked. So first off, here's the fabric. This is 32 count Cauldron Bubble Jobelin from Color and Cotton. So a green with some yellowish tannish blotches on there. And let's see that there's more modeling on that side, but I started it on this side. So I'll show you where I'm at. It's 1 block per week, but the blocks do vary in size. There's the first, I think it's 14 weeks that I was able to do, and the borders for, and then the first 3 weeks pattern. So it comes out every Wednesday. I'm not sure if I will do every week as it goes along, or if because I did all of this, those 3 rows of frames and the 3 weeks of pattern in 24 hours. So it only, because black work goes so quick, it only took me 24 hours to do that. And that's even, I had to frog the second block because the color I chose wasn't showing up, and so I restitched it a second time. So let me show you the colors that I chose. They're all fall/Halloween colors. These flosses from Color and Cotton are not named. Excuse me. They came in the Halloween box. So I'm using the gray for the frames, and then as I dropped it, I got a hair on there, and then the 4, so kind of like I've got 2 brownish, 2 orange, 2 different shades of orange, 2 different shades of purple. I might look for another green, but it's hard because the fabric is green. You got to pick a green that will be able to be seen on the fabric. So I can't hold all these up on the fabric at the same time, but you get an idea. And the 2 that I've already used are these 2, and this one is the second. So you have the variegated orange as the first block, this one is the second, and then the purple is the third. There's 4 rows of these blocks like this, and then the next row is a really skinny, but across the whole length, or across the whole width of the piece. I didn't grab my tablet so I could show you a picture, but if you go on my Instagram, Spartan Stitcher, I did put a picture of the borders all together. So that is my unexpected new start. Again, all the links will be in the description below. And I did finish my page Page 3 on Kindred Spirits by Jody Bergsma. Again, page 3, so we're in this section of the mane with all those pieces flying straight up. Lots of different colors in there. Some of the mane are deep and bold, like in the forefront, and then there's other pieces that are more subtle. And here we go. So I have over 8,000 tent stitches to finish this page and go into the next page. You can see, so there's about where the page break is, but I have some other colors feathered in, and then there's white all the way over here. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a huge block of white here. After I got the page finish, I only needed like 128 more stitches to reach the 8,000 for the national parks in full coverage phonetics. So I just went ahead and I did more of that white instead of moving all the way down over here and having to take 2 different pictures for the park. So you can see all the colors in that mane, how some of them are darker, bolder, and then it's almost like a ghost in the background of more subtle pieces of mane. So that was really fun to do. Although I finished the page on Saturday. I thought I'd have the page done faster than that. But Monday, how I told you last week that I had already done a good chunk of stitching before the video, and then I did another good chunk of the big block of white after the video. I did 1,410 stitches in white, on white, in one day, and after that I was like, I needed a bit of a break, but I kept working on it every night, just a little bit. So that's when I did the Blackwork Sal during the day. It's kind of a break, a little palette cleanser. So I kept working on it every day. But then that last third of the page, especially when you do cross country by color and you're taking colors all over the page and changing colors all the time, it just seems to take forever. So that's why it took me almost the entire week to get the page finished. But I'm done. And I'll put this one away. Next time I pick it up, I'll be working on this page down here. So that is Kindred Spirits by Bergsma. And then, so Saturday evening and Sunday, I worked on Big Red Ship of Life for its monthly rotation. Again, this is a piece that I am doing for the entire time that we're stationed here in North Dakota. 1 page every 3 months. So I did the top row all last year. So 2020, we're starting on page 5, so it comes like right here, across where that little boat is, and down. That's about where page 5 is. So I had to do about a third of a page. I just guesstimate, and I did 1,300 stitches. So there's the entire piece so far. So I did the entire border on the left side, and then started working on the motifs over here. Next month in February, when I work on this, I'll bring the sail, which is, another repetitive border, kind of, it feels like a border just because it repeats so much, all the way down. So that's 1,300 stitches. That's the entire piece. Again, it looks small just because it's 1/1 on 28 count. This is Mushroom Even Weave by MCG Textiles, done in DMC 3808. And I'll come in closer so you can see what I did. So this border all the way down, I didn't even use the pattern. I knew it from up here. And then brought these flowers down, this one, and finished the boat and did a couple of the small motifs. So 1,300 stitches, and that's all I worked on this week. Now, what am I going to work on next week? More full coverage. I wanted to get back to my full coverage after doing that. So the piece I haven't worked on yet this month that I planned on is A Summer Ball by Sandy They did have it available for a bit. You can find some of their other panoramic designs on their Facebook group linked below. Excuse me. So I'm on page 3, which starts with the woman in the yellow dress and goes just past the guy in the background with the black tails. So that's how far. And if you look, the background's not even going to be that easy because you have that giant painting in the back. So I am doing this one for full coverage fanatics around the world. In January, we're going to Australia. And one of Australia's biggest exports is wool. Well, British redcoats are made of wool. And there's a couple gentlemen in there wearing redcoats. And this piece seems like it was, the setting is the UK. And of course, the UK and Australia both have a lot of coastline. So, the around the world is no stitch count required. So it's just however much you put into it. But of course, I'm also double dipping and using this for a national parks. So I will get working on that one. Here's my starting point. I'll probably do more of her dress, do some of the easier background just to kind of try to get my stitch count up. I'll finish the gridding up here, do some of the easier background before I get to that big painting that goes across the entire page into the next one. Now I didn't make a visual aid, but for the national park, so it's 25 parks, 4,000 stitches a piece, so 100,000 stitches. There's a couple ways to look at that. You could divide 25 parks into 12 months and say, you need 2 parks and a third of a third park per month to make it. Or you can do the stitches and say 100,000 stitches divided by 12 is 8,333 stitches. Currently, I am at 5,800 or so full coverage stitches. That's already calculating all my tent stitches on Kindred Spirits and making them into full stitches. So I did 8,000 over 8,000. That equates to 4,000. And then the stitches I did on Mac Mill. So I need about 2,500 more stitches this month to get to the stitches quota. However, because I have those stitches split over 3 different whips, I may not get to the parks quota for the month. But I figure if I at least do the stitches quota of 8,333 full coverage stitches, the parks will catch up as I go throughout the year and as I work on all my different full coverage pieces. So I will work on this one. Now, because this is full cross, I don't want to burn out on it. It does tend to move slower. So that's why you also see Museum Shelf sitting here, Supersized Color Expansion. I may throw some stitches in on this one to get a 4th park underway, just for a break between tent stitch and full cross. So I am down here in the dinosaur corner. Pretty much I want to work on this because so many people are working on the supersized max color version of Once Upon a Fairy Tale, and it's looking so good that I want to work on my supersized color expansion so I can get the same satisfaction in getting progress in seeing it come together. Still not tempted to stitch up fairy tales. I want to work on Museum Shelf and see more of the picture. So that's where I'm starting with. We'll see if I get any of it done this week. I figured I'd show it to you guys just in case I do work on it. Okay, I know you're all interested in hearing how the stitching meetup went with my neighbors. They came over on Wednesday morning with their young kids that are not school age yet. The kids played. We just kept looking in on them a little bit. So my neighbor who has 3 children with a family friend that stitched stockings up for each one of them. She has never stitched before in her life. She wanted to start stitching a stocking for her and her husband so that the whole family would have stockings. Well, I do have one pattern book with stockings that's Donna Cooler. which some of her children's stockings are. And I showed it to her, thinking to myself, she really doesn't want to start with the stocking as her full piece. And she came to that conclusion herself when she looked at the patterns. She said, whoa, their color patterns are kind of overwhelming when you first look at them. So then I pulled out some of the smaller pieces, things like Lizzie Kate, Country Cottage Needleworks, just smaller, easier pieces to do. Plus, I showed them around my house, some of the pieces that I finished, trying to get a gist of things that they're interested in. So she ended up choosing a Lizzie Kate. It was kind of like a band sampler. So skinnier and taller. It's a Christmas design called Be Jolly. And it says like, by golly, be jolly. So there's different bands. There's, of course, a band in the middle with houses. And I bought it from an LNS that actually included a piece of linen with the piece. I said, no, we're not doing linen. Not as your first cross-stitch project. So I found some oatmeal Aida, and that just happened to be the right size. I had already bought her an 8x8 Q-snap so that she could use that. And then I just pulled non-DMC colors that would match, similar to the color the fancy floss called for in the pattern. And then I also had a pair of scissors for her and some needles. So she's all set. I have not asked her yet if she started, but she was looking forward to it. She's done some quilting, so she's not new to the, crafty experience. So, in about another week, I'll text my neighbors to check in on them, see how they're doing. The other neighbor, who had started a stocking for her 5-year-old daughter, she brought it with her so I could see it. And it's like 3/4 done, guys. She's pretty close. There is a lot of tent stitch in it. But as most kits go, that's what it calls for. And she's doing really well. The only thing wrong that I can see is that on the back, she was leaving her tails too long. So, we fixed that. I taught both of them how to do the loop start, which they really appreciated. And, taught the woman that hadn't stitched before the importance of making your X's the same way. And you could either do one X at a time or, do half the X and then come back. And I also gave the neighbor that had the stocking, I was like, it's counterintuitive, but it would help with your motivation to have another piece that you're working on, so you don't get tired of it. Like, all she had left on the stocking was the toe, a little bit under the name, where the name goes, and a little bit above it, and then the back stitch on the piece. That's all she has left on it. She didn't know, it didn't look like there was that much of a fabric border. So I said, oh, that's simple. We can just sew on some cotton fabric. So because she already had a Q-snap after trying hoops and like the cheap scroll frames that you find in the box stores. So she already had a Q-snap. I said we could sew on some fabric once she gets to those areas to make it easier to work on, so she wouldn't have to stitch in hand for those areas. She really appreciated knowing the loop start now. So, and she also picked, so with my recommendation that she should have a second piece, we chose a smaller Lizzie Kate. I forgot what the series is called, but there's one for every holiday. There's like Luck and Love and Boo, and I forgot what the Easter one is, but there's like one for every holiday. It's just a little square design. So I gave her the pattern for Love because Valentine's Day is coming up. And she didn't want me to kit it up for her. She said, no, that's the fun part. She's going to go get some Aida and some colors of floss from the either Joann's or Hobby Lobby we have in town. So that's how the meeting went. Went really well. I enjoyed it. And let's see what other stitchy... See if I have any other stitchy stuff. Nope, that's all my stitching updates. The rest of it's kind of life updates, and then, excuse me, not really an Air Force story, but Air Force information. So, I wanted to give you an update on Hopper. Hopper is doing fine after his broken blood feather that was like a month and a half ago, was it? I don't remember the exact date. I forgot to look it up. But one of the times I gave him a shower this week, he had his wings out, so I was able to, without traumatizing him, I was able to examine and see how his primary feathers are doing. And the primary feather that I had to pull is about, that long when I pulled it. Well, now the new feather that has grown in to replace it is about that long. So it still has a ways to go before it's fully grown in. But then on his other wing, he's got 2 or 3 primaries that have molted out, and so his other wing is short. But the good news is he can maintain altitude now. He can even get a little bit of lift, so I don't have to completely launch him off my arm. I can just go like this, and he can fly a short flight across one room from my arm to get back to his cage after I weigh him every day. I am still being very careful though, because I don't want any more broken blood feathers. I'm not letting him fly the full length from his cage to the play stand, which is across 2 rooms. So we're only doing shorter flights so he can still get some exercise, still keep his muscles toned without danger of him breaking more feathers. Let's see. Okay, the rest is Air Force related. If you're not interested, I'll see you next week. The story I told you last week about the 2 TDYs that were back to back. One of the things I did find, I was looking through all my Air Force memorabilia, accoutrement, everything I had left over, trying to find something. I didn't find it, but I found other stuff that was interesting. One of the things I found is this pocket Moleskine notebook, little Air Force Michigan State sticker on it, but it's pretty worn, and that is because I carried this in one of the cargo pockets of my pants, my uniform pants, from June 2005 until I separated in December of 2010. So I carried this in my pocket every single day for over 5 years. It's got a lot of information in it, which is why I never got rid of it. A lot of memories, a lot of good information. I'll tell more stories based on what's in here in the future. One thing that I did find, I thought it was 6 jets that went with us to Mountain Home in Idaho. It was 8 jets. There was 120 people. And then when we flew from Idaho to Vegas, we took 6 jets. So 2 other jets flew home out of the... Well, actually, we had 8. And I found a list in here of, I was trying to figure out what jets were going to come with us. I think we took like 4 or 5 and then did a swap with the rest. So not the 6 that we took to Vegas, not all of them had been with us in Idaho. And that's just sometimes the way it works, because these airplanes are flying and they have certain inspections and things that are due depending on how many flying hours they have gone, or if they keep breaking for the same thing, we'll send it home, because obviously it needs more troubleshooting into that system than we can do when we're at TDY. So we'll send that home and get a fresh jet, if you will. So, in what we were doing in Idaho, I didn't really talk about it enough, is that we were dropping munitions, but they were inert. So picture a 500-pound cement bomb with an active guidance system. So the air crew can still get training on, targeting and dropping without actually, obviously a 500-pound block of cement is still going to damage when it drops from however many thousand feet, but not like if it was actually 500 pounds of explosive substance. So, and also because you're dropping them on different ranges in the United States. So if you want to keep reusing the same areas, yes, you're going to be using cement bombs with active guidance systems. So more from this later, but for you guys to understand the stories and things that I can tell from what's in my notebook, you kind of need to understand the basic organization structure of the maintenance group at a base. This is not, it's not identical base to base to base, but it's pretty similar. It changes a bit based depending on the airframe at that base and how many people, how many maintainers are at that base. So I made a visual aid so I can save it and keep referring back to it. And of course, there's lots of acronyms, so I'll have to, translate those for you. So a wing, so a base at a base is, how to think about this. One base could have multiple wings. Where I was at Seymour Johnson, we had the main active duty wing, but then there was also a wing of Air Force reservists that flew KC-135s, which are refuelers. So it was really nice. The reservists, whenever the F-15s had to go somewhere, that's who usually would support us for aerial refueling when we had to either go TDY, deploy, something we call HURVAC. So, we're about an hour away from the coast of North Carolina at the time, and, we'd had to HURVAC a few times. So we would fly all the planes that could fly, the jets with the aerial refueler supporting us. So there can be two different wings, usually active duty wing, and a reserve wing, or you might have a bombing wing with a missile wing, or all at one base. So in the wing of a regular active duty base with either bombers or fighters or cargo airplanes, the wing has four groups. You have your med group, your ops group, which are your air crew members, your maintenance group, and mission support. So MXG, maintenance group. MX is always maintenance. With 4 squadrons underneath. Depending on the size of the maintenance group, these 2 squadrons might be combined into 1 squadron. So this is based off of Seymour Johnson Air Force Base years ago. Everything's approximate. Aircraft maintenance squadron, those are your on-aircraft maintainers. So that's those are the folks that are actually working on the flight line, on the aircraft ramp, fixing the jets, launching the jets, that kind of thing. And that squadron is divided up into AMUs, aircraft maintenance units, 1 per fighter squadron on the ops side. So if there's for air crew, if there's 3 fighter squadrons, there's going to be 3 AMUs, 1 for each squadron. MOS, Maintenance Operations Squadron, they're supporting the entire group with, these are like desk jobs. Okay, so you have teachers, you have the equivalent of the air traffic control, which is Maintenance Operations Center. They're tracking everything that's happening on the ramp, fixes that are going on for airplanes, engine starts, taxi. Of course, once they taxi, then the air traffic control tower takes over. If there's any emergencies, like we call them red balls, the Maintenance Operations Center will call people from the other squadrons to go support AMXS for the launch of whatever jets they need it. CMS, Component Maintenance Squadron, has these shops and flights. You have props, propulsion, that were for the engines, egress for the ejection seats, E&E is electrical engineering, hydro for hydraulics, avionics for all the cool stuff inside the cockpit, and PMEL is Precision Measurement Equipment Lab. They keep all of the measurement equipment calibrated. And then EMS is Equipment Maintenance Squadron. They have age personnel, aerospace ground equipment. So when you go to a commercial airport and you see big things on wheels plugged into the aircraft to supply ground power, that's your age equipment. Ammo for the munitions, fabrication flight, sheet metal, all kinds of things, the skin of the aircraft, different bulkheads and things in the aircraft that might need fixing. Weapons, actually the gun, and the launchers on the aircraft. So weapons, yes, they deal with the gun and the bullets, but ammo is actually taking care of the storage and movement and of the munitions. And then phase. So I told you some aircraft have to get some more in-depth inspections, and that's what happens in phase. They take the aircraft apart depending on flying hours, usually every 2,000 flying hours. There's a phase that is due on the aircraft where they do an in-depth inspection and look at different things. So that is your basic organization. And as a maintenance officer, we're expected to be experienced in all of these. So I was at Seymour Johnson for 5 years. That includes some of the time where I went and did my tech school. And my husband at the time, he came in a year behind me. He was also a maintenance officer. And so, yes, we were both in the maintenance group, but as they rotate lieutenants through the squadrons to get experience, they just kept us in different squadrons. So my husband and I were never in the same squadron. And for the 5 years that I was there, I had 5 different jobs, but I was only in 3 different squadrons. So he worked in CMS, EMS, and AMXS, and I worked AMXS, MOS, and CMS. So I was never in EMS, and he was never in MOS. But we just kept jumping around from squadron to squadron to get different experience. So more on this, you'll understand it more as I tell you different stories. But that is your basic organization structure for the maintenance group. CMS and EMS are kind of like the back shops. So if a part is broken on the airplane, we can take that part off the airplane, send it to the squadron like a generator on the airplane, or a hydraulic part off the airplane, or the avionics boxes. We'll take them out, they'll go to the back shop and fix them, or even the engines. So more on this later. I gotta stop this video now. I hope everybody has a good stitching week, guys. Bye.